In this video, we'll take a look at how to watermark your artwork using Photoshop CC. So what I've done here is I've created an action, and an action can automatically do things in Photoshop like create watermarks, for instance. So if I play this action, it's going to play back all of these steps which create a watermark. So I can jump over to any of these images and just click that button. I could even automatically set this to do this to a batch of images if I wanted to, and it would automatically add this watermark to any number of images that I ask it to. So first of all, let's take a look at how to watermark artwork without using the action. We'll select the text tool, and you'll just click on your artwork, and then you can type in your name, or you could put copyright, information, anything you want. I'm going to select the move tool, and I'm going to hit Control T, and then I'm going to drag this corner point here and make this larger. I'm holding Shift, that way I don't squish this text. And I'm going to make kind of an all-purpose watermark. Now, what I recommend that you do, if you're going to watermark, maybe be a little more tasteful about it and put it like down in the corner or something. And you would probably want to try to watermark each piece individually, because some pieces are going to be lighter, some pieces will be darker. Like this piece, for instance, if I put a watermark in the corner, it has to be black. If I do it on something like this here and I put a watermark here, it would have to be white to stand out. So each piece kind of needs a custom job, but you can do an all-purpose watermark. And if you're going to do that, it makes more sense to go ahead and put that watermark in the center, because then you'll know that it'll be in the same place on each image, because some images might be larger or smaller and you wouldn't want your artwork to get cut off if you were going to try to do an action. So let's put our watermark here. Let's make it pretty big. If you hold Alt while holding Shift, you can scale from the center, and that's pretty handy. And if you want to know that it's absolutely centered, if you drag, you'll get these pink guides, and when they form a cross like that, you know it's perfectly centered. Now if you want to change the color of your text, you can do that here. I think white looks good, and we'll put a black stroke on it using the effects stroke, and we'll put a black stroke on it. That way, if we use this on either a light or a dark image, part of this watermark will always show up. So I think 8 pixels is a good stroke width, and we want to turn the opacity down so it doesn't stick out so much, just enough to be able to read your name, and there you go. Now if you want to duplicate this onto other pieces of art, you can right click on that same layer and you can choose duplicate layer, and you can just select the document that you want to move it over to. So let's say we'll move it over to this eyeball. Now if we jump over there, the watermark is over here, and we can of course move it here. Now if we want to automate this process, it's actually pretty easy to do. An action really just records every step that you make, and then you can play back each of those actions. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this to record, kind of like you would if you were recording a movie or you're recording your voice. It's going to record everything that we click on here. So I'm going to delete this watermark action and create a new one. The Actions palette can be found under Window, Actions. And what we want to do first is create a new action by clicking on the new icon here. Let's call this Watermark. And then as soon as we hit record, it's going to start recording everything. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you do as few steps as possible, do only the necessary steps. So for instance, over here we've changed our text opacity to 13, so let's remember that so that we don't have to pick multiple values here. Let's go ahead and click on record. We'll select the type tool. We'll click with it. We'll type in our name. We'll click this checkbox to commit. We'll select the move tool. We'll hit Control T. We'll scale it up. And then we'll center it. Then we'll select an effect for a stroke. And we'll change the opacity to 13. Alright, so that looks a little weird overlaid on the other layer, but we'll fix that in just a second. Now we'll click stop to stop recording. If you wanted to, before you click stop, you could also save this file, but it gets a little tricky when you try to automatically save multiple files this way. So I would recommend just kind of doing it manually like I'm doing here. We'll click on stop to stop the action. So it's only recorded those steps. If you did any extra steps in here, you could of course select that step and then just delete it. But this looks good. This is exactly what I want. So now I want to click up here on Watermark to select that watermark action. And I'm just going to delete those 2 test layers that we did and just click the play button, and that will play all of these actions and create a watermark. If I go to the next document and click play, watermark. And the next one, watermark. Now you'll have to save each of these images, of course. That's why you could include save as an action. But just to make sure that you don't mess anything up or save over anything that you don't want to save over, I recommend just doing it manually like this. So we could go to File, Save As, and then save a copy. because you want to have a watermarked copy and a non-watermarked copy. So don't save over your original with your watermark or you're going to be really unhappy with me. And the format you'd want to choose would be PSD if you want to save this as a master copy. That way you can change the watermark later. Or if you just want to save it for printing, you could choose TIFF. Or if you want to put it on the web, which is more than likely what you're going to want to do with a watermarked image, you would choose Save for Web. And then I prefer the PNG24, but you could also use JPEG. JPEG is going to compress your image a little bit, so that's why I don't recommend using it. Now, if we go to File, Automate, Batch, we can choose an action here, and we can choose Watermark, and we could pick a folder, a whole folder of images, and then we could choose where to put those images when we're done, and you can give them names and so on, and we could process a whole batch of images, like 1,000 images we could automatically add this watermark to and have it save, and you wouldn't have to go through and do this all automatically, but you really have to know what you're doing here, and you want to make sure that you're not saving over your originals when you're doing stuff like this, so be very careful. When in doubt, just make a copy of your art and then mess with it in Photoshop. That way you'll know that if you mess something up, you'll just mess up that copy and you'll always have your original. Alright, so that's how you can watermark your artwork using Photoshop. If you found this information helpful, take a quick second to like this video and share it with your friends. And if you're new to my channel, click the subscribe button to get free updates when I release new videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Thursday for another Photoshop tutorial.